I'd like to welcome everybody to the Curriculum Instruction Committee meeting for January. The meeting is being recorded. And present is Scott Potts, myself, Walt Shaheen, Chair, Dr. Otto, Connor Kurtz, Mrs. Trainer, and Mr. McElmoyle. Little housekeeping here. We, as you know, and I think quite a few of you have been here, we're at a more like a family-type meeting where you don't need to get up to the podium. You can just raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you, and we can roll on. As long as there's no pontificating, we're in good shape, but we haven't had that in a while. I do have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. I repeat that every meeting, but it is a hard stop at 9. And for that reason, I have changed the agenda around a little bit, putting Anne-Marie at the end so that so that when the PowerPoint war comes out, we can stop at 9 o'clock. Okay. Just a note that Mr. Potts and I are currently seated on this committee. We will be voting on Monday to add Mr. McLaughlin, who is not here, who's work schedule problems, and Mr. Kurtz. But we're going to allow him to sit and participate as an ad hoc member right now, and value his input on some of these things. So I'm going to change the agenda slightly. All the items are there, as I said. We're going to start off with the music and move then into the staffing, high school program, study handout book, the part day option for high school upperclassmen, and then finally the subject that everybody has been waiting breathlessly on the edge of their seats for, the assessment testing. Okay?
I have been.
So let's jump right into the high school music curriculum, marching band, and curriculum status.
All right, I'll introduce the issue. There had been a number of letters circulated to various people and some complaints registered. I think it kind of started and got its fevered pitch when some fans were complaining that the band didn't make an appearance at one of the playoff games. I think maybe some of the information that came out was either misleading or unfairly critical about the process, and maybe some misunderstandings occurred as a result of our changeover from band being co-curricular to extracurricular, which was a major change in focus in the program, which obviously got a lot of airtime last year. So I asked Mr. McAdam to come, and Mr. McElmoyle, he and I had a meeting to discuss this at length, and I think it's fair that we kind of share what we talked about and have Mr. McAdam present some of his concerns and things that happened now as a result, really, as our first year of doing this. I guess the band hasn't been extracurricular in quite a long time, so I think that's what we're here to talk about. I don't really have a script per se, other than to I think it's fair for him to be able to represent, from his side, what has happened as far as the music program is concerned. So if I miss anything there, Justin, in our conversation, I'm going to turn it over to you, not to put you on the spot, or Mr. McElmoyle as the high school principal, to kind of just get the issue out on the table, and then we can, discuss it appropriately. Sorry.
Well, I will start. I think that going forward, we need to define what the marching band season is. And what its function is? Is its function solely to perform at football games? And if so, when the regular football season is over, is the band season over? One of the questions really that was not answered, I think, for the second football playoff game was, would the band staff be paid since the season really was over? Their season has morphed into, originally way back when, traditionally bands were established and they did perform at halftime of football games. But all high school bands then, over time, developed their own competition leagues in which they compete in. And that's why the band, their last competition was Saturday after following the Friday of the first playoff football game, so their season hadn't ended.
And they did, just
So
in fairness, they did
perform.
appear at that football game.
Yes, they did.
It was
So-
the next one that seemed to cause the furor.
That's right. So their season had ended, and the question was, okay, now, are they going to, all the band staff be paid like football staff, and any team that has playoff games, they get paid extra as an extracurricular staff. I figured it out, and it was going to be about $1,500 to pay the band staff for 1 week to prepare for the second football game. Really, since there really wasn't any direction on that, then I just said, well, I don't know if I can't, honestly, I can't spend $10 without the business office approval. I was looking for direction on that, and there was none. So I told Justin, you're not going to perform at the second playoff game. This, in the future, this needs to be clarified. So what is their function? I think that's really the first question. Is their function, do they exist to play at halftime of football games? My answer is partly it is, but it's not their sole function. They have their own competition season, and going back again to last year, when that competition season ends, even if it's let's say the football team wasn't so good and they didn't have the first week of playoffs. They weren't in the playoffs. The band season wasn't over yet. They would have been another week beyond football. So I think that there's some questions to answer there. And would they be going down the road if there was a third football home game, which we talked to Michelle about? If they were to move back to Division III, it's possible that they could, and they were to have 3 home football games, it's possible that they would be playing on Thanksgiving. If the numbers went down a little bit as far as the male population, and that they're still going to be good, they could end up having a 3rd home football game. Is the band then, if the expectation is for them to play, it's only fair that they be paid, the staff, for those 3 weeks. That's my view on that.
Is that your recommendation then?
Well, before we get,
Okay.
we hadn't really budgeted for that contingency.
On a $50 million budget, $1,500 is going to be noise in the background. I mean, it
Understood.
could be found. And I heard a lot of grief that, the competition had their band there. Didn't look good. I know the music boosters weren't happy about it.
Sort of stuck out.
Yeah. So again, I mean,
No, I don't disagree.
I understand that we're in a budget crunch. I understand we have a $3 million gap or so, but we're talking, 3 decimal range percentage noise here when you're talking about $1,500. So.
Well, I'd like to say, at these football games, we don't need to take the full marching band necessarily. There could be a pep band playing in the stands. That would still have a band presence. It wouldn't be the full band.
Well, that doesn't affect the cost. The cost is still going to be the staff. So.
Well, if we didn't need all the staff, if they only played, if they took maybe a select group of students, I know they contemplated doing
for the size and what we were playing against, I think really you should have the whole band there.
Okay.
I mean, we might not be there next year.
Yeah.
I mean, this might have been, Lord forbid, but...
Yeah.
I would say after, because I was a little fired up about it too, and then after I sat and talked with Mr. McElmoyle and Mr. McAdam, I kind of got a more balanced view of it, understanding that it was a new territory for us. Yeah, the money you could say was an issue, but really wasn't, and there was a little bit of confusion with that. So I think we can't undo the past. I think, but going forward, in fairness to the band and to the high school administration, I think they need to be provided some direction, be it from me or feedback from the board, consensus as to what we're willing to do, so that next season, because there's more than likely a chance that our football team, looks pretty good. I mean, things can happen, but there's probably a chance we're going to have 1 or 2 playoff games again next year. So we're probably going to be in the same circumstance.
I mean, the board was fired up too, so I don't think you're going to find the board not wanting to support that. I mean, board members that were in attendance were surprised and were upset about it. So I think that, moving forward, if it happens, we're going to find a way to make it happen. And if Mr. McAdams is willing to do, I mean, I think $1,500 should not be a roadblock to putting our best foot forward when we're at that level of competition. And if we go to Thanksgiving, then we should be even happier because the program took the next step forward, which it hasn't gone, at least in my memory, to the third playoff game. So, and be happy that we're there.
Additionally, there's a Memorial Day parade, which I didn't think of until we had the meeting, Dr. Otto and Justin and myself, that the marching band, that's not a concert band function, but there would be an expectation by the community for the marching band to be there. And when they're not, because all their uniforms are away, they're not practicing, it's different than concert band. Again, there will be complaints from the community. Where's the band? It needs to be clarified by the board what the band is supposed to do and communicated to the community. So it doesn't come back on the band director or the high school administration.
And that's the function of that is the fact when it was co-curricular, I believe that was quote kind of an assignment. Am I right with that, Justin? But
So
now
you had
that
to go
it's,
to it.
now that it's extracurricular, we don't have that aspect of it. They can just say, hey, you know what? My season's over. This is extracurricular, just like football season would be over. Band season's over now. But before, when it was co-curricular, band season ran from September to June. There really was no band season. They were an intact band
Well, again,
the whole time.
The football season's not over until you've played your last game.
No.
Because you always hear about extending our season, extending our season when you make the playoffs.
Right.
So if you make the playoffs, your season didn't end. No. Okay, you've extended your season, so you can't say the football season ended and then now they're in the playoffs because their season extended. That means the band season extended. Now, if there is a financial facet of that extension of the season, then we need to address it. If it's a home game, which this was, I'm sure the gate receipts and everything else far exceeded, which again was not budgeted money, this stipend that needed to be paid. I think it's a moot point. You're right, it wasn't budgeted, but at the same time, we didn't budget the extra gate receipts. We didn't budget, I'm sure the sports boosters did not budget the extra refreshment stand receipts and money they were going to bring in. So it's extra money, and the money's there because the money that wasn't budgeted for the gate receipts could easily pay for this and move it forward. So you're not going to hear anybody on this board argue about not having the band there and not paying them their stipend to get them there for playoff games.
I think we should. Justin, we've invited you. I think you should be fair to let you speak to what questions you might have. Or
No, he may stand up and say, I don't want to go to.
Well, no, I think, should we be there? Absolutely. But if the season, it's very difficult for me to block out 3 or 4 weekends at the end of November and say to the families and the students involved in that activity, maybe you need to be here. I don't know yet. Depends on what these people do. So I think if we can say at the very beginning, all right, the official season, the regular season, if you will, ends on this date.
Well, that's a given.
Right, and then it will be extended. Everyone knows up front that's to be expected. I mean, now it doesn't mean if someone can't be there for the third weekend, well, they can't be there for the third weekend. But from I have to totally agree with Mr. McElwain. I think we need to come up with some kind of. It probably needs to be an official writing of some sort that says that those stipends will have an extra.
And we'll work with our solicitor to get that in there because it's going to have to be a mod to the contract, so that it's noted that it has happened. I mean, it's not.
Well, the other issue may be too, even though the football team may be good, they may not be good enough to get all home playoff games either. Right. We could extend our season, and since the band doesn't travel anymore anyway, that wouldn't have any impact then either. Right. So that's another variable in the whole equation.
The variable goes they may have an away game the first game, and then
be a home game the second game.
And be a home game the second game because they're ranked higher. Their seating is higher. But I mean, let's. I mean, I think that, and we'll bring this to the board on Monday. But I think that you can feel safe to go ahead and say that our season ends here, and oh, by the way, there may be a calling for you to show up at these games to play for the home playoff games.
The second question that Mr. McElwain raised, I think, has to be addressed as well, is that if we establish that the season ends at a certain point, that Memorial Day parade in May, that's a big question.
Well, I got that down here. What is the band's function to talk to the board about?
Right.
Is the band's function the march in the Christmas parade, the Memorial Day parade?
And let's be specific. It's the marching band.
Right.
Because that is a separate.
In other words, the kids that pay the activity fee to show up for marching band activities.
Right.
That subset of people.
Right.
So.
Because you are right. You're what, 5 months after you last marched, and you're expected to get out and walk down the street and play your
Yeah,
instrument.
and I think it's only fair that the members of that organization know what's expected of them up front and what this district wants of them too. So
Well,
that's really
the parade's in May, and the marching band practices begin in June, I believe. Is that correct?
yes.
When in June?
It starts right at like the last week of school for the following year.
Okay.
We can just say maybe the marching band season begins Memorial Day. It doesn't end Memorial Day, but the new season begins on Memorial Day.
Right, but you also are dealing with upperclassmen that have left. I mean, it's
Yeah, I don't know that gives them the presence to put on a good show either.
Well, in the Memorial Day parade, they're just marching. They're not putting on a show necessarily. They're playing their music. In the parade, they're not doing a field show,
Well, I would defer to Mr. McAdam on that.
right? That's my experience.
I will never put a group out there that does not look or sound good. So
Doesn't mean they don't have to
if
sound
we
good.
if we did not have enough people at that parade to accurately represent what the music program is, and B, what the district is, I would not feel comfortable doing that.
What
Yeah.
number is that in your mind? Is it
Oh,
100?
it's at least 2/3 of whatever the organization.
Yeah, I mean, if your whole bass drum section doesn't show up, it sort of,
defeats the purpose.
yeah.
Yes.
I would say that for this year, whatever we take forward to the board on Monday, it has to become a response to the community this year, so we don't get into that same letter writing campaign and negative feeling that, oh, the band's snubbing the community, because I don't want that to happen again, because I think some bad things came out of this whole football thing. So if we can give the band, listening to everything, I'm not so sure how we get involved in a parade this year under these circumstances. That's just my thought. If there's a way we can, if you want us to try to work a way to do it, we can do that. But I think at the end of the day, if we can't, who are we responding to for that parade?
I haven't.
Is there a committee, parade committee?
I think it's the combination of the American Legions in town. I usually get the invitation sometime in February or March.
Let me ask you a question. How much time would it take to prepare? I mean, just say that.
It's the week. It would be the week before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we decided to say, look, we really should do it the week before, it would take a week to a week and a half to get everybody together again and march it down. Okay.
And then that would come at a cost.
But there are two. There are two things
right.
that go along with that. One, and I think is that extending the season from the financial standpoint? I think that's a question that has to be, answered either now or later. And two, and I think it was a question I had brought to the two of you. There's 81 kids right now in the organization. If I get to that first rehearsal, and I've got 20 kids that show up, and then I show up at the parade, and there's less than. I'm going worst case scenario. Like I just said, I'm not going to put a group in public that's going to potentially be a negative view.
Not to mention people travel on Memorial Day and
right. I mean, we've always been low on attendance on that. Just I'm thinking of a family right now who's been with me since I started. They've never been there because they always have a giant family reunion on Memorial Day weekend. So you add all those things up, the numbers are typically usually smaller. Now I had suggested it's very easy. I can get an idea in the coming weeks of who would be available for it, but it's January talking for something that happens at the end of May. So
right.
I mean,
Well, even if you got an idea, bring something that we could bring back to the board and say, look, we got 81 kids. Best guess right now is 43. And
That sounds better than 20.
And we know, but we know that number is going to go less, and may not be in.
Right.
So, and you may say of that 43, we got no percussion.
right.
I mean, you have to look at it from that standpoint.
And then you have to defer to him and say, he can't take a band out without percussion.
No, I agree. So if you could just do a little more legwork on that, by looking at some numbers. I mean, I'm a numbers person. If we can go back and be able to say, it's just not going to work because it's not a mandatory thing any longer. Okay, thank you.
I think we should also talk about, earlier, Mr. McElmoyle brought up, what is the band's...
Yeah, I've got that here. What is the marching band's function? And that's something that we need to discuss with the board to determine. And is the marching band function to march in parades, or is that a nice to have? But their function is to compete and to march and to put on performances at football games. That seems to be most of the time what I know what my marching bands have been when I was in high school way back when and everything else. I mean, that's what their function was. And anything else was a nice to have if everybody wanted to do it.
I agree with Mr. McElmoyle. It should be a combination. But I'd also like to say I think the community needs to come first, and that doesn't just go for the music program. It goes for all our programs, especially considering, all the community funds these programs. They invest heavily in these programs, and I think they should be the ones to reap the rewards of the program. But we do need to find that balance between competition and...
Well, if I got a choice...
Actually, I have a question for you, Mr. Kurtz. Is the football team's function to support the community?
I think supporting the community would be beneficial with the football team.
Yes, but is that their function?
It's not their function. It's not the marching band's function necessarily. The function of the marching band is to help kids learn music, I think.
Right. But again, let's. If I've got a choice as a board member of marching at the games or marching on Memorial Day, they're marching at the games. If we got one or the other. And we'll just take it from there and talk to the board, and I'm pretty sure that the board will be headed that way too.
I'm not to be a traditionalist, but football games and marching bands are part of the American experience. Let's face it, that's just a given.
And if the other team brings their marching band, what do other schools in the county do? Do they?
A lot of that has because of the recent budget issues.
It may change.
Districts have cut back. Some have not. Wilson obviously is one that hasn't. We made a decision as a board 2 years ago when the worst of the budget hit. That's it. But band wasn't traveling anymore to away football games. It was just too expensive. So
okay, let's take a look at that then. Okay. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. A few months ago, I helped a friend of mine move, and I met one of her neighbors in Edders, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've ever heard of Edders, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's in Lancaster County.
Yeah, Lancaster.
Yeah,
or
way
York.
past Lancaster County, actually, into York.
Yeah.
And she was helping us move
friend that lives
boxes,
there.
and she said, "Oh, where are you from? Where do you work?" I said, "Oh, I'm a teacher, Daniel Boone." And her first response was, "Oh, Daniel Boone, they have a really good marching band." And I just thought that was really cool. So I want to give Mr. McAdams credit for what he's done, because it's clearly noticed, not only locally, but also outside of Berks County as well. So I just want to share that. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that. I don't think there's ever been a question about the marching band's reputation or quality. I think the things that we're working through really are more logistical issues than they are. We've had philosophical conversations about, what is the function and this and that. But once you get past that, there are some logistics realities that we have to deal with.
I understand.
And I don't want the music program to get lost in the logistics, or over $1,500 that we might have been able to find.
Right.
So
well,
I think
there's no question about finding it. It was there just when gate receipts. So,
enough said.
Yes. Before we move on.
Did you mention earlier that when the football season is extended, you pay the football coaches more?
We have a plan whereby anybody that extends within the contract, there's a stipend that's paid per game, per event, and it might be $20 an event. I'm not sure what it is.
It's not a large amount, but it is an extension.
And in the Memorial Day parade, and I only have to go 2 blocks for that to walk down. My wife and I don't miss that. In 2009, was the marching band in that?
I can't answer that.
Yes.
How about 2010?
Yeah.
But they weren't in 11.
Right. We changed. If you remember last year, we changed them.
This past year we were.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you've been in them.
This is the first year now that we are extracurricular in a long time.
Were you in the parade this year?
Yes.
Back in May.
In May, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
This year.
The question is now, are they going to be in 2012?
That's what
we're working on now.
Correct.
It was the last 4 years. right?
I think it's probably,
Yes, before.
Yeah.
I just started, because I don't remember a parade when they weren't.
Yeah.
It's-
I remember we had the band practice at Beacon, and
Right.
our scout troops were right there, so we were.
Nothing against St. Patrick's Day. But if you were going to a St. Patrick's Day parade community, that would be one thing. This is a Memorial Day.
I agree.
There's a real reason for our band, the Daniel Boone Band, to be in our Memorial Day parade in Harrisburg. And I'd be very disappointed if that didn't happen.
Well, I think in fairness to that whole issue, that's Mr. McAdams made that very clear that we might have an issue, and I appreciate that he brought it forward to us and brought it to our attention.
Unfortunately, it is a fallout that we did not see when we went curricular. So I mean, extracurricular. So I mean, we're going to rectify it. I see there's enough sentiment to try to figure out how to way to make it work. But again, we got to take baby steps. We got to get a head count number, see if it's going to work. I believe it's going to, because if they like to play, they like to play, and we just need to figure out how to get it done. That's all.
I mean, my wife goes to football games to watch the band. I mean, because she was in the band. She goes to watch the band.
She's probably not alone. I'm sure there are a number of people there for that.
Didn't see the band, the playoff game, and on top of that, I saw the other band there traveling. I wasn't happy. I didn't write letters. I talked to a few people, but I'm just telling you, it wasn't very helpful. Now, you had a change in policy. In 2010, the prior year, how many did you have in the marching band? And I'm asking them 11. Your policy, how did it affect the numbers of people?
Go ahead, Justin.
we had 100 kids last year, we're down to 81 this year.
I'd like to interject, that's not necessarily all due to the policy, though. I mean, I was in it last year, I'm not in it this year. I did not stop participating because of the policy. And I know some of my friends did not as well. It's not just one reason.
But that's a significant problem. I would hope you would monitor that every year.
Yeah, we're going to have to look at it. As Mr. Kurtz said, it may not be just policy. We're going to have to look and watch it next year and see if it flatlines or if it increases. There were some things with bringing middle school kids up and some of the other things that changed around, so we're going to have to look at that.
Thank you.
For the number of competitions the marching band attends, I don't think it's much to ask them to attend some football games and some parades.
And again, I don't think there's an issue with asking them to do it. The issue is these were fallouts from going from one type of a program to another that we'll address and then move forward with it.
It's very easy for all these activities when it was a class to say, all right, this is a great. It was an easy way to ensure that students attended it,
Right.
Especially if it was something that they didn't necessarily want to attend, or if they, especially at the end of the season where we have multiple events piling on top of each other, that it gets tough. And the Memorial Day Parade has always been, I've been able to add that in, factor that into to the end of the marketing period, fourth marketing period grade as well too. So you're right, it's logistics and fallout that weren't necessarily looked at when this was all decided last year.
Okay. I think we're done. Let's move on to K-12 staffing.
Okay. One of the reasons I brought this back was because BCTC is pushing the bill for a response for a math issue, but just...
I did answer that. I said we weren't.
Yeah, we did.
We're not sending them there for that.
Right. No.
But then it plays into a staffing piece.
Right.
But I just wanted to let you see, I know you're going to start to talk about some options with staffing, and this does not reflect what I don't know yet as far as kindergarten registration and first grade. I'm going to run 2 days. Some of my secretaries and I are going to stay 2 nights the first week in February, and we're going to do a parent registration for first graders for those students currently not enrolled in our own kindergarten program, because that could either change where I move teachers, reduce where I need teachers.
Yeah, because the note I have here that you don't have here is class size in the elementary schools.
Right. So I don't know yet how many will come back. There's about 45 out there. And so both myself and Monsignor McCann need to know that, because he's going to need to open a first grade if those kids stay, if the macro conception stayed for him. And kindergarten registration is the first week in March. We are low in the census this year. That's not always a good predictor, but by the end of March, some better entry numbers. Based on your contract agreement with DBEA last year, where people told you ahead of time who was going to retire at the end of this year, you have a counselor at the elementary retiring, and page 1 shows you the differential between what would be a starting salary person and the current person's salary, and the savings that you would see from that. There's an art teacher at the high school, and if you decide to replace that individual, again, you see the positive difference in the money. We currently have at the high school 1.5 staff in technology education, industrial education, if you will. And Bill and I have talked a number of times, and he is planning to reduce that to 1 full-time person only. And so we will be losing the current full-time person to retirement. And so the half-time person is currently half math, half technology education. So there's no benefits needed to be added to that salary. So again, for another half of a salary, there's a savings of almost $73,000 by cutting that half a person out of technology education. And looking at BCTC and the need to bring our kids back, or keep our kids, I guess is a better way to say it, for math, Bill's determined he's also going to need a half of a math teacher in order to be able to get that to work, still giving you a significant savings on page 1.
I don't know, and again, this is all confidential, so we can't share it beyond this, but because it's still a working confidential document. Beyond your reply to them, I think the word hell no could be added to it, because we're struggling with our math scores as it is with certain portions of our student body, and we do not need to send them to BCTC to be taught math and have very little controls as to what, how, and when they're being taught it. So.
And I believe as of, I'll say December 1st, there were only 3 districts that had not already indicated they were going to bring them back. Us being one of the 3, because we hadn't responded yet, and then Bill did respond that we aren't either. So
What's the number of students this impacts? I don't think I asked that when we talked about this.
143.
So 143 kids would be staying back for an extra math class.
Right.
That's a lot of kids.
Right.
No. No. The seniors do not at BCTC.
So it'd be 66 would have stayed back this year. So
we have to determine if we're going to make them take math since they're see, the reason we decided that, first of all, was a lot of them went out on co-op. So we didn't require a 4th math for BCTC students.
Correct. I remember seeing that.
Right.
But now, when we're bringing them back, I think a decision has to be made. Now, many of them still may go out on co-op, first of all. So maybe if they are BCTC students, we just continue the current strategic plan requirement of 3 math credits for them, but they take them at Daniel Boone High School. So the seniors, and there's about 40 kids per class, the seniors would not take that 4th math requirement. So we're talking about sophomores and juniors, and that's about 80 students. That
about 80 kids
taking math back at the high school, give or take.
Approximately 80 kids.
Over on page 2, a second-year repercussion of a decision made last year to eliminate level 1 of foreign language at the middle school and only run Cultural X was to postpone a year where the high school would be faced with a significant increase in the number of kids needing level 1. We can accomplish that by moving 1 full-time Spanish teacher from the middle school over to the high school. And if we add a half of a position back to a German teacher at the high school, Bill will be able to meet that need. If you then go over to page 3, a board decision, Ankle will need significantly soon because
Well, we're going to have to bring this up on
Right.
Monday.
It's going to take a lot of redesigning the schedule. If we choose to eliminate foreign language at the middle school, or I'm sorry, if we
Cultural
if
exploration.
we would say let's keep cultural X, we cannot do it without adding another half to each of those two individuals currently there, and it would cost you close to $70,000 to add the other half to those two individuals. So we either say to Mr. Henkel, sorry, just assume you're not going to have foreign language. Their first experience for foreign language is going to be in 9th grade, or we're going to give you the staffing to do it.
Mr. Kurt, I don't know if you recall last year, Mr. Henkel said he could do this and he would change to an 8-period day.
It's currently in the middle school.
9th day, 9 periods.
I think he would split that between math and English.
Right, yeah, he would be adding a little bit extra time to that. I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks. Unfortunately, I do value foreign language, but I think with a $3 million gap in our budget.
Well, if you look at the bottom of page 3,
Yeah.
if you said yes to all the, yes, we'll give you another half of this, another half of that, your savings from the start of everybody I was jiggling around, you'll see where it says total savings with options 1 through 3. If you tell me to work with Mr. Henkel to run the 8-period day, you can see it's a significant increase in the savings for those individuals.
I would be interested to see at the high school level how many students are in Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, and Spanish 4. Because if you do eliminate the middle school language offerings, you're going to see...
Now, there's no level 1 at the middle school this year.
No, okay, we already did eliminate.
Yeah,
So
we
you're going
eliminated
to
last
need
year.
at least 9
Okay.
sections of level 1 that you currently don't have at the high school next year.
Right now, what you basically do is eliminate level 5.
All right. And how many? I guess what I want to know is how many students are in level 5.
There was only a handful.
Yes, correct. There's about 10.
Single digits?
Sometimes a few more than 10, a few less.
And it's
And
taken
it's
as an
being
AP.
phased out as the current cohort.
I think we've got two more years.
Yeah.
All right.
And if I walk back memory lane, back when the middle school didn't even exist, and it was just a junior high, we didn't have foreign language. And so at one point, they sort of ran a 4-5. You know, it was just sort of a level where you moved to sort of an independent study in the level 4 with a couple of folks that really had an interest in that particular area. So it wouldn't be something we haven't done in the past when we had it all at the high school.
That's a,
Is that much of a struggle?
That's a deep
Is that much of a struggle with running it that way?
It wasn't.
This is a
There wasn't the
significant.
population that
Right.
there is now. I
Right.
think it's going to be more of a struggle now than it was then.
Yeah.
The teachers are going to be very stretched with probably 6 sections, larger sections, 25 to 30. And independent studies is really up to the individual teacher whether they want to do that. So it depends how, stressed they are with their current caseload of students, which could be 120 to 140, and it's up to them. That's how it's set up. They are not required to do independent study. They do not like to mix section level 4 and 5. They didn't in the past. That's going to be up to them to decide.
I don't. What are your feelings? Do we bring this to the board with a recommendation? It's a significant amount of money.
Yeah, well, this is going to be a big ticket that there's not going to be much there to bring that number.
I think we need to bring it as a recommendation.
Correct.
Okay.
I would suggest as a starting point, because we have a long way to go in this budget.
Right. Okay.
And not
And
to
these are
turn this
really
into a budget
program
meeting.
endorsements so that we can get started.
Well, you got to go to PD for
You know.
these, so.
One would be that Bill will have to start looking at math and how he would be able to accommodate these individuals.
On
And
Monday,
also
we'll bring
Tom.
these as a recommendation to the board to accept your recommendations here, including the middle school language.
And we can just really do those two. Forget, the others are part of the staffing that we can talk about as the budget.
Right, but that-
It's
that
two
you- what-
philosophical pieces, foreign
Yeah.
language and bringing kids back for math.
Right.
That's all that I really need them to agree with us on right now.
And it's-
I'm curious, BCTC, when they determine what each district has to contribute, let's $800,000, $900,000. Now that they're cutting back on the math staff, is it possible that districts wouldn't have to contribute as much?
One would hope.
That's something we can take up at the superintendent's
That's going to have to be
meetings.
taken up at his level, but one would hope, because if you're not going to staff 4 or 5 math teachers, there's $400,000, $500,000 out of a budget, all in budget, all that doesn't need to be done.
I can't see how it wouldn't be reduced, because they're taking money for something we're not receiving.
I would hope it could be explored at least.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I'll make
Now,
sure it gets.
when you spread it out against 15, 16 districts in the county, we may
Well,
not
they
get
service
as-
16 schools.
Yeah, we may not get as much a reduction as one would hope, but we're sitting here. Anything we can get right now, and that $3 million gap we got is going to be. So okay.
So that takes care of item 2.
Item 2. Thank you, Mrs. Strainer. Let's move to item 4, which is the course selection guide, and I'm sure the majority of the people in the audience are here for it.
Correct.
Yeah, we asked you to go back and look at 3 items. Okay.
Right.
Item 1 was the waiver. Let's take the easiest, the one that I don't think anybody will have. Going back and looking at what it would, changing the requirements to move out of what we currently call applied into academic.
And that was reduced.
And that was reduced
92.
to 92, which
From 95
to a 92, which basically is you get an A or a good A, and you're applied, you can move on up. I don't have any problem with that, and I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, and everybody was in agreement with that in the
Okay.
draft.
I mean, I understand why the 95 was there, but I also understand from the standpoint of wanting to. What I did not want to do is did not want to mainstream somebody into that level and never be able to get them out of it, because 95, y'all have bad days. You have a bad test once a quarter, you never get out of it. So I have no issue with that change to 92.
Did you see a number with that dropping at the 92 that you're going to bring?
I mean, did you model that to see
No.
what it would do?
Well, no, I don't know yet how the applied kids are going to end up.
How about last year? I mean,
No, I didn't look
Okay.
at that.
well, any feeling from based
Our
on?
big concern was just so many of the students who are trying to make that jump who really aren't prepared
Okay.
for it.
And again,
So we were-
I think if somebody scores a 92 average, then they probably, although they may struggle a little bit, would need some help. They earned the right to try.
And we were all in agreement.
Okay. Okay. Then let's, the waiver.
Okay, well,
You went from having no waiver whatsoever.
it didn't work at all. The kids, and some of the math teachers got some statistics together, and I'm sure Mrs. Romaine has some of those numbers. I know I was emailed by one teacher who teaches Algebra 2, a couple of years after the fact, when kids that didn't qualify for Algebra 1 signed a waiver and got in. They generally get through Algebra 1 maybe with a D+, a C minus, but when they hit the wall come Algebra 2 time, and I think from Mrs. Young, who teaches the vast majority of Algebra 2 students this year, most of them are failing, and if they aren't failing, they have a D. Those that sign waivers. So it hasn't been successful. They want to try it, but they really aren't prepared for it. And I think Mrs. Romaine can speak more knowledgeably about it than I, having experienced it.
Personally, from my classes, I only have one student this year left on a waiver because the others who tried it didn't even make it through the first quarter and realized they were in over their heads. At that point, you try to give the parents the story of, this is what we suggested last year. The former teacher recommended that they not move on. I hate to sound, but the parents think they know better until the student does hit that wall then, and now they're dying, and now we moved them out. So I have one left. It's that case where it was a student who didn't work real hard before, matured as a senior, and they're working. Personally, I only have that one. Mrs. Young had statistics that Mr. McElmore referred to, where every one of the Algebra 2 students she has this year on a waiver is a D or an F. Mrs. Driehaus, I know she has quite a few in Algebra 1, so she can even give you more statistics on it. It just doesn't work. The one we're talking about a possibility for a waiver, at least we'd like it to be a teacher recommendation tied to it, and where the teacher could say, all right, if we wanted you to have a 74 and you had a 73, as a professional, we can make the call of, you did have a bad day, you had a bad quarter, you should be okay, versus you've worked your tail off to try to get that 73, you're never going to make it in Algebra 2. So what our recommendation was is to have sort of an adjusted waiver that if you're within 2 points of the criteria, that with the teacher recommendation, you could move on to that next level. We don't want to make it where we might as well do away with all of the criteria if we're going to say parents can sign in anything. Then why even have a standard there? But to allow that little bit for those cases where, oh, I just missed it, that with the teacher recommendation, they can make the call on whether you...
No, I agree with you from the mathematics standpoint. But let's move over to, say, biology, chemistry, physics. Biology has absolutely nothing to do with when you go into the chemistry program. Chemistry moving into physics, although it does have a lot to do with the math end of it. You're not building on previously learned material. And to say that you go from academic biology to applied chemistry because you didn't pull the grade, did you think along those lines? I have no problem with setting up different waivers with different courses or different areas of study, but to do English, say, let's look at English. You know,
I don't disagree with that. It isn't like a spiral curriculum like math. We could do the same thing where it is if they're within 2 percentage points, and it says on page 4. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it when I forwarded what Mrs. Romaine just said. It said the last sentence, there will be no waivers. However, students that are within 2 percentage points of an academic course prerequisite may contact the teacher and request a recommendation to move into the class. So it is in there. I didn't forward that back to you guys, but it's in there.
But again, I would like you to just re-examine the English and social studies and maybe the sciences. Maybe it's not 2 to 3. Maybe it's 5. I don't know, but you know, they're like you said, they're not spiral. And maybe somebody, you know, had problems in 9th grade English, but really could do 10th grade academic English, and because they're not spiral.
Okay, we can do that. It can vary. It's really in those subjects. I think it's more of a reflection of their work ethic, and if they mature, and in 10th grade, let's say, they really did change. My experience is a lot of them don't, some do. But a lot of them don't. Their past performance is indicative of their future performance. Some of them do mature and change, but they're generally the exceptions. And if anybody that's teaching disagrees with me, please speak up.
Again, I agree with the math. I have no issue with the math. I would just like you to. I mean, I apologize. I don't know if the other department heads are here. I assume they are, or they may not be. Check with those other department heads and ask them. I mean, do they agree with this, or would they like it to be, maybe go another point or something? Just to re-examine, because this is going to be the question you're going to get when the full board looks at it.
I would like to ask a question too regarding not necessarily the waivers, but the 2% thing. I like the 2% for. I know the waiver only applied for applied students moving up to academic level, correct? It didn't work for honors or anything.
It was also academic to stay academic, though.
Okay.
Like if you didn't make the grade going from geometry to algebra 2, you could have a waiver for that, which is one of the areas where we got into a lot of problems. You could have a low D and trying to take algebra 2, and it just doesn't work.
All right, I want to talk about the other end of the spectrum, honors, AP, moving from academic to honors to AP. I noticed in here the new stuff added to the course criteria. There will be no waivers. However, students that are within 2 percentage points of an academic course prerequisite may contact the teacher and request a recommendation to move into the class. Academic course, is that academic courses or is it all courses?
Academic. So I'd have to I probably should add which it was in the prior handbook.
Yeah, the last
All
paragraph
crossed
at the
out.
bottom.
Waivers were not accepted for accelerated honors or advanced placement courses. Now, I know we're talking about, I guess, AP US 2 last year.
If you get a 91 in honors, you're close to a 92, you get a teacher recommendation. I think you should be able to take it. I think the 2% should apply for honors level classes. And AP classes, I think the teacher knows better. If the teacher doesn't think the kid with a 91 would do well in AP, okay, well, but then the teacher doesn't sign the recommendation. But if the teacher thinks that 91 student will do okay in AP, then why not let him go into AP? I like the 2%, but I say expand it from academic to a more broad.
Well, we can do that as we have, including the teachers. The sending teacher and the receiving teacher recommend the student go into AP. That we've done that, and we're doing that in English now.
Okay.
So I don't think that's.
And I agree with Ms. Kurtz. I think the same thing. I mean, if you get a student that's 1 or 2 points off in the honors and wants to either continue with the next level honors or wants to take the AP, the teacher says, yeah, you can do it. I know you can do it.
Yeah, I don't think our policy should tie their
Yeah,
hands.
I mean, right now you're saying you can't.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we talked about that before. I mean, Mr. I mean, you've got.
My only question with that is, when you talked about separating by department, for the math department, we've already lowered the standard to get into honors and AP. It's different for math than any other areas. So I would be very hesitant to say you could go 2 points lower than that. Now you're talking about a student going from a C into that honors or
Right.
AP. We've already lowered it that you just, as long as you have a B, you can go honors to honors, honors to AP.
I think we had that conversation a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
When I first got here.
And we've lowered it to that. We're happy with that. It's worked, but I'd really be hesitant to say we could stop 2 points off of that.
Yeah, we
has to
crossed
be
that bridge a
our
couple
bottom
years
line.
ago.
Well, we could do something maybe department by department, or we could maybe, if we were to do a all-encompassing.
Yeah, because you're at 83 or better right now to get into honors geometry from algebra. So
We probably could do it by
No.
department. Instead of putting it on page 4 here, for each department under math, we would have what's here on the first paragraph of page 4, but it could be different in social studies and English.
again, you're giving them a little bit of leeway in their own academic world to help craft what they're looking for. And again, you keep going back. They're not spiral, and therefore I think you could be a little more lenient as far. And maybe they don't want to be, and if that's what they come back and say, you know what, it's 2 points also in English, then it's fine. But they'd at least wait in. They've given you that say, but they'll also say you can have 2 points to get into the English, stay in honors English.
And even if we did put the 2-point buffer zone in, with the teacher recommendation, the teacher doesn't have to recommend the kid. If the teacher does not think the kid is able to move forward, the teacher doesn't need to recommend him.
I think the teacher should have the final say. I mean, we don't have a negative environment for the student to come into class and struggle, and then you got to take away to help that student or students, and it's taken away from the others.
Yeah, because you look at honors history, I mean, you got to have an 87. It doesn't tell me a kid with an 85 can't do honors history too. Okay, I mean, an 87. So again, there's that 2 point leeway as long as the teacher says it's okay to move up. So
Yeah, if they have a discussion with the sending teacher as to why this kid got an 85, and are they going to be able to keep pace with most of the other kids that have 90 and above? I mean, that's also an issue, more so in math than the other subjects. But math we're kind of settled on. But we can, and I'll have this ready. I'll talk to different departments and get this changed.
either that or everybody drops it to 83 and we leave it at that, and it's across the boards the same way. Which I know I was joking, Bill. I was joking.
You really went straight there.
Need a drum shot. Bada bing.
Okay.
I just want to see each of the department heads in their own areas weigh in on it and be able to do it, because I agree with Mr. We want to try to give as many of those kids options to be able to do it that may just be in that borderline that we can move them over.
Okay.
Well, the question I would ask, and I'm assuming you're going to do it, is that hearing those math statistics was pretty compelling. I mean, one kid's making it to sign a waiver. That's not a real good endorsement for a waiver in math. But in the other areas, it would be interesting to see similar data to determine what each department does, you know, and what has happened.
I'm curious, I don't know, do they get as many waivers in the other departments as we seem to get?
No, there are not a lot of waivers in the other departments.
Okay, so there are not even a lot of them to even pull from.
There are some, but there's not a lot.
Well, there is not applied U.S. history, for example. Is there? It's only U.S.
Correct.
history one, so you really wouldn't even have the ability to move up from applied because there is no applied. All right.
What was it previously to be in a ninth? If you were applied and you wanted to move into academic, what was the previous threshold?
I don't even know if we had a score. There wasn't really. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think there was a score for it. That was
Okay, so that's part of the reason that
it wasn't recommended. We
Right.
used to say, like, we don't really recommend it. It was more teacher discretion if the teacher felt you could, but it just became more and more kids wanting to do it.
Okay.
And the bottom line with any move to it, no matter what it is, I totally agree. We want anybody to have an opportunity to try something. But it starts to pull the whole program down when you start getting a few more at the bottom and the bottom. Going back 5-6 years ago, we had a huge number of honors geometry students that year. And there were a huge number who shouldn't have been there. And you had those students who belonged there every day sitting there as those others went, how do you do number 1? How do you do number 2? How do you do number 3? And it pulled the whole program down. So I agree, we want to give those kids the opportunity. We have to be careful there not to get the whole program weighted.
Well, I'm not. Don't be offended. I'm not worried about bringing the program down. I'm worried about disenchanting the student that gets in there, and all of a sudden he can't do that work.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the next 3 or next 2 years of his high school career, he doesn't think he can do math.
Right,
and
but
then
it's a combination. I mean,
yeah.
that's why we're so concerned in all areas on not having such strong criteria.
Mhm.
And we're not trying to be, no, you can't do it, you're not good enough for it, but it's a tough program to get into in any area, in any discipline.
Okay.
And we want to make sure on both hands we don't put someone in there who's going to struggle and get just frustrated with it.
I think the flip side of the argument is we owe it to any student to help them do a self-assessment of their own skills and properly advise them as to where they should ultimately be as well. So that's
I think
something.
you just hit it there. We owe it to them to advise them. Unfortunately, we're getting a lot who aren't taking our advice.
Right.
Parents are just
Understood.
and going, nope, my kid's going to do it anyway. My kid's going to do it anyway. And I think you hit it right there. That's what we're looking for is we want to be able to give them the best advice to put them in the best
Right.
place for them.
And I think that's why this teacher recommendation is a good idea for moving not just from applied to academic, but all levels. I think that we should
it's
leave
it's what's
teachers
best
to
for the
right
child,
things.
and unfortunately, there's a lot of parents out there that think that their children probably do better than they actually can, and they don't have the ability also to help them do the work either. So, because they don't understand the material themselves. So, I know if my daughter ever takes calculus, she's on her own. So,
Okay, well, I will see the other department heads. And
so just so we can review those items, the 95 to 92 was great for the math. You're going to set up a separate criteria for look at the other department heads to ask them what their peerage was. That 2% in the math, we'll keep that without an issue with the teacher recommendation as a waiver.
I have a few questions, too, about some other things. I just went through this before the meeting. I know you requested that we send you questions. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, it's a
But
demand.
I know the committee brought to the full board a while ago, well, 2 months ago, I guess, recommendation to raise the weightings for honors and AP classes.
Yeah, well, that was to be done with the incoming 9th grade class next year.
Okay. I don't know if I don't think the board ever voted on that.
We did recommend that did go as a recommendation. The board agreed to do it.
Okay.
Gave them direction to do that.
All right.
That's already in the book, right?
No,
Because I didn't see it.
No,
Oh, I thought that doesn't go in the book.
because it won't impact.
Not yet. Okay.
Won't impact those
right.
ninth graders.
But I'm glad this was brought up because it's part of the reason I asked department heads and teachers to come because we had an academic council meeting, which is all the department heads, and I wanted to get their feeling on weighting AP courses 20% and honors 10%. And essentially, I have a good example which I think helps clarify it from one of the math teachers. Weighing an AP course, let's say a student gets a 77 in the class, which is an average C, a middle of the range, and it's weighted 20%. That takes that low C up to a 92 in A. That's a 2-letter grade jump. And as it's pointed out, the grade is an indicator of what the student knows in the subject area. It's really not supposed to be weighted based on the amount of work somebody puts into a course. So I know it's the feeling of the entire academic council that weighting at 20% is way too much, and honors 10% is also too much. And I don't know if you wanted to add. I know you had a discussion in the math department.
We had in the department also some students had issues, and some of the student issues I thought were very, very well taken. One student brought up the fact that their strong point, they love an area, their future is planning on an area where there is no AP course offered. It's a student who's in the top 10 of the class. So he said, would that mean then I'm going to have to fight for my class rank, fight for my GPA? He has the ability to take AP courses in anything he wants to. So does he sacrifice, let's say it's a computer science, a strong computer science person, that's his future. Because he can't take an AP course there, he's saying then do I sacrifice that and not take it? Because 20% is going to make a significant difference in class ranking and grade point averages. So now we're affecting, what do I choose? We're going to be picking courses just to get that extra weight, which, as Mr. McElmore just said, that's a huge difference to take.
I can go the other way, where I know several students that are taking straight academic studies and blowing them out of the water because they want the class ranking.
If we can incentivize students to take higher level courses, I think we should do that.
But what about the students who can't, for one reason there, like I said, it's an area where his passion, his future is based on computer science. So now he's going to say, well, I can't take those because I have to get the 20% now in the other course. The other side of it is you're going to have kids who are just taking them just to get the weighting on them. And now what happens when there's scheduling conflicts? I can't imagine the phone calls Mr. McElmore will get because he wants to take AP biochemistry, physics, and they can't have them all, and he has to take Susie's getting those because she takes other things. They're going to be fighting just to get those. To me, just being there, like 77 to 92, I just have a huge issue with saying a student who has a C average in a course will end up getting the equivalent of an A. And then you're looking and saying, now we have kids who took academic courses, have a 95% GPA, and they're in the 40th, 50th percentile of their class because we have such high inflation on the other end. The message we're going to send to a college when they look at a great kid and say, look, 98%, whoa, you're in the 50th percentile of your class? What's that school doing?
I'm more concerned when you go the other direction, and I thought I brought it with me, but it may have been in my other stack here, where we looked at what some of the other schools in the counties are doing.
I have all the statistics from BCIU as far too, and I happen to know one of the people in one of their schools, and it's obviously a calculus person. They have so many kids in their calculus class this year that they are doing abysmally because there are so many kids in there who can't keep up because they want that AP grade. Happens to be a school that's the Berks County Math Competition. I can look back for the last 20 years. They won it every 3-4 years. It was them, lost one. In the last 4 years, they have not placed at all. What's happening to their program? Very little else has changed. There are kids taking these courses who shouldn't be taking them. Their whole motivation is the grade. If I can take a calculus class and pull a 77 to get the equivalent of a 92, hey, I'll go for it. And I just really, the absurdity to me to go from 77 to a 92, I just think it's sending a really bad message across the board.
I'm more concerned with the fact that we're putting our students out there competing for positions in colleges and stuff against other Berks County students that may have that advantage.
And no argue there. The data that I have at the point I got, it said 3 other schools gave it 20%. Another school gives 8%, not even the 10%. So we're going to get, I mean, from what I have that I got from the IU, some didn't report on it, but the ones I had gave
Well, Mrs. Trainer gave us, I think we had almost every school, and some of the neighboring schools too, and some of the other schools. There were a couple outside in Chester County that gave 20%, and there was a couple that are outside of this area that gave 20%. So
some gave higher than
20. Some gave higher than 20. Some were 25 and 30%. So.
And then like one of the AP teachers said to me, all right, then we're going to balance it out and say, right now, if I look and I give an extremely difficult, challenging AP test, because when the kids take the AP test itself, basically a 50 to 60% gets them a 5. These things are just grueling, the tests they're taking. So I will give some tests where it's very, very difficult. If the grades came out to be, say, an average of an 80, I personally will adjust those and say, no, they're not all 80% students. I'm adjusting them, making them realistic for them, making them what they deserve. I cannot do that and then say, all right, I'm going to give them the 80 because then that'll become a 96. Well, they're going to have issues getting that 80 on the report card. That student's not an 80%. They are in that challenging material, but when you compare that, we're already making adjustments to account for that. We're already giving them...
But see, you are. Not everybody is doing that. And I think until we... And you can't tell me that everybody who teaches an AP course does some type of sliding scale or some type of an adjustment when they give a particularly hard test and the mean grade is, or the average grade is lower than one would expect. So again, I mean, we're looking at different practices based upon who's teaching and who's giving what. We just asked you to look at it, and we still have we still got some time yet, because you probably aren't looking at, I mean, those talking about those incoming ninth graders, you're looking at 2 years probably before they're going to be taking an AP course. So it still needs to be studied, still need to be looked at. I mean, let's model it. Let's look at, at the end of this academic year, let's take some of those students that come out of APs in all the different areas and say, if people coming out of Mr. Remain's AP calculus course got 20% added to them, what would it do to their grade? And look at, physics, and let's look at chemistry. Let's look at some of them and see. Again, I use data, okay?
Yeah,
and you use data saying somebody who got a 77 ends up with a 92. That was a fictitious person. Okay, let's take some actual data. Let's see how much it affects, what the impact is
But I think
statistically.
it is, like the one teacher who said to me, he said, I will adjust my grades and I'll be giving lower grades than if they're getting a 20%. Because they said right now, and I don't want to say we're pumping grades up for them, it's not that, but realistically, like I said, the AP test of 50% gets you a 5.
See, the problem you have, though, and this is the other end, we're doing it for class rankings.
Yeah,
when you apply to colleges, that weighting is not in. It's your average.
Is it appropriate? I don't know if it's appropriate for a kid who takes academic courses all the way through high school, graduating in the top 10 or top 20 of their class, when a student who has taken plenty of honors classes, plenty of AP classes, graduates 40, 50. I don't know.
But
I think
again,
there
I
should
look
be
at the
some
data.
adjustment.
I know in the past, I can go back like how many years. Every so many years, there is one of those students that you go, oh, they got in that top 10 because they took all academic. So you're talking about one student. I can probably off the top of my head say, if I went back to the class of 2003, because I can remember those well, I can probably tell you there were 2 students who fell into that category where I say they should have taken more AP and honors. They cruised, and you don't cruise through, even academic. If you're getting 98s and 99s in academic, you're not cruising. So, should they have taken an AP or should they have taken an honors class, pushed themselves, that would have been great, but you're not talking that many students who are doing that.
I think we should really, if kids have the ability to take these more difficult classes, they have the ability to push themselves and try hard, I think we should reward them, and I think their GPA should reflect that.
And it is. It's getting that 10% already, and the 20% is just, and this is sitting again at the academic council meeting, everybody had the same reaction. The 20% is just absurd to think of moving a 77 to a 92. From a C student, you're showing that you knew C-level work, and you're going to end up having
A
an
C
A
student
show
in
for
an
that?
AP class.
Well, again,
it's already
let's.
showing it's an AP class, though, so it's already showing that was a difficult class.
Not on the
You see that
GPA, on the transcript it will, but the GPA
That's
is
right.
going to be a number. It's not going to show how many APs, it's going to show it in the transcript, but the GPA is still...
They still got their 10% added in
They
there.
got the 10%.
Yeah, let's again.
Never
I mean,
settle this argument
we're not going to settle this now, and it wasn't on the agenda for here. And go ahead, Justin. I'll give you the last say.
As a teacher in a subject that does not have any weighted courses, and forgive me if I'm bringing back something that has been talked about at a previous meeting. What was the purpose of this? I mean, is this an overwhelming complaint of kids who have graduated and said, "Man, I wish I had a higher GPA"?
No,
is this just looking at?
It was looking at our entire academic program and saying, how do we stack up against the others in Berks County, other schools in Berks County and our neighboring counties, and how they weighted their courses so that we were as competitive. And it came back, and at the end of the last recommendation was to review it and come back with a recommendation. 20% was one of them. The other recommendation, Popsy was making AP 15% and honors a 10% bump.
What was what define competitive as far as kids getting scholarships, kids getting into 4 years? I mean,
all the above, because
Where are we deficient there? I'll speak personally. My daughter graduated from Boone. She took AP courses. She got 10%. She got a full ride to college, to a great college. Nothing held her back. She represented Daniel Boone as the best that we have to put out there. Nothing held her back. That 20% was.
And I'm not saying that it
I
would.
feel like we need to compete with it. I think we're standing on our own. We're doing a great job. We're putting phenomenal kids out here. I don't see why they need that extra boost of a GPA.
Again, the gentleman 3 rows behind you had brought up another issue. Do we take an F down up to a 75? And we everything that is brought to the curriculum committee is on the table to be looked at. And this was something that was a question that was raised, something that's being looked at. We looked at it and went back and said, please bring us your recommendation. Period. And that's where it is. Just as the 75 as an F was brought back, a recommendation was no, keep the grading where it is. We have a nice bell-shaped curve with the data that was provided to me. We looked at it. It's a normal distribution. Leave it where it is. So again, it was just Mr. McElmoy will be examining it. We still have a couple years before we need to do anything about
it. If it doesn't work, we change it.
Yeah. So
I think from the first start tonight, what got us, we all kind of looked at each other when you went, oh yeah, that, when
yeah.
brought it up, and you went, oh yeah, that already went through.
No, the recommendation went through is for Mr. McElmoy to continue looking at it and bring the committee and the board a recommendation.
And that's fine. Like I said, the first thing that came out was, oh, that's already been done. We already went and we kind of went, whoa, that was. When did that slip by? Or
Currently, what's your highest C?
Somebody help me.
82.
82.
So if it was a 10%, that would just take it up to 90, which would make the C up to a B. Is that
correct?
Thank you.
Now, the reason I brought this up was because I was just wondering, this is a question, there are accelerated math classes, and currently they're weighted as a normal class. Is there a difference between accelerated? Should that have any weighting attached to it is my question.
I don't believe so. I think Mrs. Romaine would agree with that. Okay. We have accelerated, they're just a notch below the honors, and that's why accelerated was created. And they're also above regular academic. So that's why it was put in place there.
Yeah. I mean, again, I can speak because my daughter took accelerated. I mean, it does stretch them a little more than the academic, and it gets them a little bit tasty back into an honors course. And
if it stretches them a little more, maybe we should look at. I know if you guys came back and said we shouldn't, then I'll respect that. I'll move on to my next point. But if it is in between, then maybe there should be a little bit, just an idea.
I personally, again, I don't think it stretched her all that much to make it worth.
All right, then.
I mean, there was extra work to be done, but it wasn't enough to make it worth 2.5% more or something.
All right. I just wanted to bring it up. I'm also going through here. I'll bring that up now. Just a few typos I found that I'll mail them to you if you want. But in the gym curriculum I was looking at, there are some things in here which are not covered each year. I don't know. I'm not sure, like table tennis. We've never done table tennis in gym. I'm not sure if this is something that everything in here will be done, or do we even have the ability to do table tennis?
I'm still wondering how the hell square dancing qualifies as being a... But
we have table tennis, and we used to. I have. It was a major unit. We did have enough tables, and I just think that they got damaged and they haven't been replaced. So that hasn't reflected some changes, and it could be updated. I can check with the phys ed department on that.
All right.
But this does go out to every department head,
and they approve it.
And they look at it, and they give me changes.
All right. I was just wondering, for some of the, I'm now on the symphonic band here. Can grades be given for things that are outside of school, out of the school day? We discussed this, I know, last year with the extracurricular issue, making marching band extracurricular, but for a curricular class, can grades be given for an event outside
the way it was done is if it is a performance like an exam type thing where the entire year leads up to, like, let's take choir for example. You're practicing to give a Christmas concert. Then you can grade for that Christmas concert. If the symphonic band is doing its deal to do a pre-performance, and that's what the entire course subject matter is, then you can grade for that performance.
All right. Then I noticed there's now a prerequisite for being in a symphonic band of having a C or better. If a student, for whatever reason, does not get a C or better, does that mean he cannot play an instrument in the high school? And can he come back, maybe not the next year, but the year after? Let's say a freshman gets a D, a high D, and he cannot participate in symphonic band the next year. That means he can't play an instrument. That could really end his musical career on that instrument, missing a year. I'm not sure.
Again, like anything else here, I'm sure that if he was to go and to Mr. McAdams, and I do know that others who have done this and play a piece or something to get in. You can. I mean, he's not going to stop a student's creative juices from flowing because he didn't get the grade and just locked them out.
I just want assurance for that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Then I just had one more thing, and this is my final question.
He's taking your time up, Andrew.
Sorry.
He'll pay for it.
He'll pay for it.
He'll get the full version when the rest of you leave.
For the prerequisite, under prerequisites here, it just says students should attend a meeting about the summer work in the spring preceding the course. Technically, that would be a prerequisite. You must attend the meeting. If for whatever reason the student doesn't attend the meeting, common sense would tell me that there would be, the teacher would explain to him what he missed.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about, I'll point like Honors United States History 1. Is there a page number here I can give you?
No, because the paging isn't complete yet.
Okay, I got it.
It says here, student should attend a meeting about the summer work in the spring preceding this course. If the student didn't attend the meeting for whatever reason, maybe he just forgot, he would not be locked out of that course, right?
No,
I
they
wanted
just
to
have to
That's
know
why the
what
word should.
The summer work,
Okay.
they
Yeah.
have to get the summer work out.
What you don't want to do is the student to say, I have no idea what the summer work was.
Yeah.
So.
All right, that was it.
Okay.
My question. Sorry, Mrs. Trainer, for taking.
Let's go to the next subject real quick, and then we can give Anne Marie some time. You got it as partial half-day update. One of the things that the committee and the board had asked you to look at, and you came back with one option. The options they wanted you to look at was the possibility of seniors leaving early for half day, or taking a half day or a part day to go either to we said just leave. You want it, you put it in as an employment option, and or coming in late. And I didn't see that at all in here.
Yeah, I did look at that, and it's really going to create some major scheduling problems. I looked at this year, first period, there are 20 classes for seniors. There are currently 255 seniors taking a first period class. There are 47 seniors in a first period study hall.
That's because the way this year's scheduling worked out.
Well,
yes.
The master schedule is very it is very complex, and you have to spread things out for all grade levels.
Mm-hmm.
There are approximately, probably, if I were to go through each period, the same number, except for lunch, the same number of senior courses offered just about every period of the day. And as you go through all that, what will happen is students will see that, let's say we just say, if you happen to, at random, get a first period study hall, you are allowed to, with parental permission, to come in. Your day starts at period 2. There will be, I know there will be enormous pressure. Kids may not want to be in a first period class. It could be band. It could be chorus. And they're a senior. I don't want to do it this year. I'd rather sleep in. They could be in an elective like law and anthropology, which is first period, forensic chemistry. They could say, no, I want to sleep in. And it's going to be a major problem. I cannot take these 20 classes and,
But just to interrupt you, those 20 classes the seniors are taken as electives because they need to take a class because they don't want to be. What happened? How many of those 20 classes do the students actually have to take? So we're at a standpoint now with a $3 million gap in the budget that we're going to need to do more with less. And our thought was there was a financial savings by allowing a number of students to come in a period late and put different people in those seats in those classes. I mean, seniors are there are going to be a number of seniors going into next year, and I know quite a few of them, that are going to have most of their requirements for graduation satisfied and are only going to need to take a few courses, but are going to have to take electives because they need to be there 9 periods a day.
What's wrong with that?
$3 million gap in the budget, and we need to do more with less.
I understand
Okay.
that, but I'm an art teacher, and I'm servicing close to 250 kids already.
Yes.
I don't have a high proportion of seniors, okay? So this doesn't, I'm not just saying just for the seniors, but these kids are getting experiences in these electives that they might not ever get a chance to do again in college or outside. I played in the orchestra up through 12th grade, 3rd grade through 12th grade. I didn't do it in college, but I'm so glad I stuck with it till my 12th grade year. I'm thinking about all the kids that are in the art classes that we take and how that benefits them. There's so many skills that they gain that enhance their performances in other areas. I'm sorry, I'm just advocating for my program because I really
Nobody's saying do away with the art program. Nobody's saying do away with the math program. What we're asking, though, is we asked for it to be investigated, okay? Because we're going to have to come down as a board and make some pretty tough decisions very shortly to bring the budget in line, because there are not 5 votes on this board to raise taxes above the index, okay? Which means we're either going to have to cut program or we're going to have to raise taxes. So as part of the reasons to save program, your art program, your forensic chemistry program, and all the other electives that we put in that are great programs, is if we can find some way of putting different bodies in those seats to keep those programs and not have people that do not need those electives to graduate have to take those courses. That's all we did, is ask them to look at this. We've asked the administration to look at it, because if we don't, it's going to be something that's going to be forced, and we don't want that.
Right.
Okay, if we don't favor the morning, how does it look for the afternoon for the seniors that can go
Well,
out?
the problem with the afternoon is, if you read the thing, if you leave, you can't play sports, you can't come back for an extracurricular, you can't do this, you can't do that. So how many football players are going to say, yeah, I'm going to leave at noon and not come back and play football? Because you have to work, and you've got to apply for it, it's got to be approved, and they're going to check up on you.
I mean, that happened years ago.
Yeah,
70s,
I mean, we have the
80s,
work
that was-
release program. It's been in effect. We just
Work
haven't
release.
put it in the course selection guide. There are 175 kids, seniors, taking a 9th period class this year, and the rest are in study hall. Some of them work release. Now, a lot of the seniors, there's 40 seniors that are VOTEC, and so they're not there. So you can reduce the class size from 300 to 260 right there.
And obviously, if you're going to take a work release to go to work, you're not going to come back to play football because you're out for a period. You're not coming back. So I understand that portion of it.
But I didn't realize that was the objective. I was just looking at that as an option.
No, seriously, I mean, that's the objective.
So
I mean, that's yeah.
Some kids really, they do perform better if they sleep in a little longer.
Well, you know, they may, but the
it's
body.
really not possible with this schedule.
Right. Sleep aside, it's a financial look, and it's an option the board asked the curriculum committee to ask you to look at.
A lot of these courses, the electives are for, like, as I mentioned, forensic chemistry is for seniors only.
Right.
Now, I mean, many of the parents, as a parent, I'm not going to let my senior come home halfway through the day.
Right.
It would have to obviously be if the parent agrees to it. Yeah. I'm not, yeah, you're right. The vast majority of seniors have, they only need 4 more credits maybe to graduate. They have, that means in their senior year, many of them only need their senior English, their senior POD. They don't need a science, they have that out of the way, and they need their senior math, and they need phys ed. There's many seniors like that. But to think that, what are they going to be doing with all that other time, free time they have? There's no jobs for them.
Right.
What are they going to do?
And I'm not advocating decimating Mr. McAdams' band by saying, hey, seniors, you don't have to come in the first period. If you get a choice, don't come in first period, and all of a sudden, he loses half. We simply want you to look at it and say, and say that, what is the feasibility? And unfortunately, we don't do too much modeling in this district. But what would happen if we offered it this year, and how many seniors would have been able to take it this year, and what would it have done to it? If you come back and say, look, we would have lost we would have saved a half a head count.
Yeah, I'm interested in
staff-wise.
knowing how many students would participate in this, how many parents would even allow
We'd have to do a survey.
Yeah,
with
because those
parents
seniors would have to
signing
drive.
up.
But it's something. If we don't look at it, then we didn't do our due diligence.
We need to look at it. We need to look everywhere we can to find savings because we are facing a perilous financial reality. I know I would not take advantage of this personally. I would stay the whole day. That's just me. I don't know how popular it would be. That's the only thing. I don't know. I'd imagine it would be pretty popular coming in a period late for a lot of kids. But I don't know. I do understand that we're looking at a harsh financial reality, and that's why I do think we need to look at it.
Again, that was all. Take a look at it and let us know. Again, I think that we can keep the early out. Obviously, I mean, I think it's a great thing. The work release. Again, you only get a handful of students that'll do it.
Well, I think that might be hard because it wasn't advertised necessarily.
Well, no, it's because how many seniors? We did this number already. How many seniors are either involved in an extracurricular or a sport? And when you run those numbers, it basically says if you take it, you can't do it. So whether you're a football player, you're a softball player, or a baseball player, once you're in it, and you're done. So
right, and all that's also part of the college application process, being involved in extracurricular activities, and that's why you want your child to be in at least 2 extracurricular activities. That's my rule during the school year.
But again, my point is, I want to be able to tell the full board, Mr. McMillan looked at it, he modeled it, and there's no savings, or he looked at it, modeled it, and there is a savings. Simply saying I can't do it because it's hard to schedule is not going to sit well.
Well, I really thought the issue was the study halls are too big. We need to find a way to reduce this, and they're not too
I don't
big.
care if the study halls are 80, 90, 100 kids. We've got cafeterias. The bottom line is, is money. Is there a financial savings by modeling it? And if you come back and say no, then it's no. If you come back and say yes, as long as you've got data to back up your recommendation as owning that building, then we'll support you as a curriculum committee.
Well, I can tell you right now that, in general, about 70% of the seniors will have everything they need except the subjects I mentioned. A survey would have to be done for all juniors with their parents signing off that they would allow them to just take 3.33 credits or 4. And then they're done, and they can go home and do whatever.
What I need you to tell us...
That's what I'd have to do.
What I need you to tell us is if 75% of the seniors are eligible for that, and take a number, if 50% of the seniors accepted that program, what would the ramifications be? And if the ramifications are 0, then we don't even float it out there.
Well, I do think, logically, a lot of the electives are going to be impacted severely. If 50% of 250 kids took advantage of it, because VOTEC is gone, so we're reducing it down to 250, and half of them took advantage of it, a lot of these electives and the teachers that teach it I can say, it would save money, but if they took advantage of that, I think they're hurting themselves. I think we want them to take as many courses as possible. I know
but I want
save
you.
Money.
I'm a data person, okay? I've always been a data. I mean, again, maybe it's the fact I was a biology major. It's all data, okay? Please look at it, model it, I mean, we've asked Anne-Marie to do this before. If 75% of the kids qualify for it and 50% of that 75 take it, then these are going to be around. You're going to lose these courses. We're going to lose these head counts, but the issue is going to be this. And if you bring us the information that we can go back to the board and said, we examined it, we're not going to recommend we do it. Okay? That's all this committee was put together for, and that's all we asked you to do is look at the impact. Yeah, I do not want to go all the work we did to put the curriculums together and eliminate, as you said, the forensic chemistry class. It's a senior-only course. What happens if nobody sits in it? Then the course goes away. And we put a lot of work into getting that course in, putting it in, and getting it staffed properly, taught, curriculums, and the whole 9 yards. It doesn't make sense to eliminate the course. At the same time, with the economy we got, if we don't examine and turn over every rock, and then come back and say we turned the rock over, there's no gold under it, we're going to leave things the way they are.
I think your other variable might be, what will the parents say? Will they let their student come home?
Yeah.
Maybe we could put something on the website, a survey, for parents, I don't know.
I don't want to go that far yet.
I think you could do the model without.
I want a model
without
first.
doing a survey.
Mr. Shannon, I'm assuming when you say there would be potential savings,
Right.
that would be in salary and benefits by reducing staff. Is that correct?
Correct, but I don't know that.
Now, let's assume you had this policy in now for next year.
Right.
Let's assume it was in. Okay? And students start, once you get the handbook out, and once the students start registering, when is the end of that registration process?
It takes about 2 months. We start the month of February, March. Probably mid-April it's done.
All right, so mid-April, you would know from students who opted and also parents who opted.
Right.
Right? You would know by mid-April. So let's say that it came back, there was enough to reduce some staff. So you take somebody from a 1 down to a 0.75 or 1 to a 0.5, is that what you're looking at?
That would be a potential.
That's a potential, yes.
I know how many sections.
But then let's say the following year, you do it again, you have it again, and it doesn't go that way. And now all of a sudden you find out you don't have those people, and now you need those classes. Are you able to find people who would then go back? Do you understand? From a
I understand what you're talking about.
I mean,
You'd
as
have
far as
you'd have to present it
as far as staffing,
Mm-hmm.
you may save in 1 year, and then the next year maybe you can't get somebody for that particular. I'm saying that could happen too.
Yeah, and unfortunately, at that point there, you may have 4 study hall periods, and that's not what we want to do. That's why I want it modeled. Okay, I want it looked at. I want numbers, but that's why every time Mrs. Trainer comes, and we talked about the weighting of the AP, I said I want every school in the county and some schools bordering the county so we can look at it and say we're okay, we're not there. Unless you can, show me some numbers so we can put, you're in your the grades. We looked at it. Normal distribution, bell-shaped curve, we're fine. Unless, gut feeling was, 75. That a lot of us went to school with 75 being, is what it was. We moved it. We looked at it. Still normal distribution. Leave it the way it is. And that's all I'm asking for. Look at it and come back and give us some information.
Does the state still have a requirement on the number of hours for you to run a full school year? It used to be 800. Do they still have that or not?
990 for high school.
Okay, 990 for high school.
It's in the school code.
And what if those particular students don't have the 990? Does that affect them, or is there any?
It's the program you offer, and if, just like a student might get a medical exemption from something that they wouldn't have to take it because they may have a broken leg or something.
Right.
If Bill's providing a waiver because the parent's signing an option, it's the program that's
So the
sponsored.
990 would not affect this?
It's not per child. It's what's available. If you choose not to take it, that's a choice like going into academic or applied.
Thank you.
The 990 hours is the time we need to, quote, be open for business.
Okay.
That you have to offer 990 hours of instruction. That doesn't mean that the student had to take 990 hours
All
of
right.
it.
Thank you.
And again, just so that we're clear, I'm not advocating removing any specialties. I'm not advocating removing any teachers, any staff. I want to look at it so that we can go back and report to the board that it was looked at, examined, and there really isn't any savings worthwhile looking at, or
Just another budget tool.
there's a pot of money that we can go for a budget tool.
We're
And
just
that's
looking
all
for
it-
information.
Yeah. I just want information to be able to go back to them with. That's it. Again, I got my personal opinions. I'm not sure there's a big pot of money out there, but I want to look at it.
It's worth looking at.
Yeah. I do like, and I'm not sure what the rest of the board's opinions are. I do like and I think we should keep it in the one thing in there, the work release, because we haven't had that in the past.
Yep.
There's only going to be a small number that'll probably do it because of the fact that you're out of extracurriculars and other things. But if you don't have any problem, we can bring that as a recommendation back.
We'll provide them that option.
Okay. And if there's not, again, you understand, I'm not looking to, because I think that a lot of what you brought the courses outside the mainstream, biology, chemistry, physics, all the math and the English courses add a lot to the photographies, the art courses, the forensic chemistries. I mean, all these things add a lot to what's going on out there. I want to be able to look at and be able to sit in front of my other board members and say, we examined it as a committee, we looked at it, it's going to cause more hassle and it really isn't worth it based upon what it would do to our student body. Okay?
Okay.
Based on that, if there's no dissension on the board, the committee, I'd like to recommend that Monday we recommend that he proceed forward with this course selection guide with the changes that we recommended and or modifications to some of at least the courses themselves, so that they can get that out. I mean, we talked about you going back to your different departments and looking at some stuff and that kind of stuff, but you need to get this out.
Well, the vote's not till the end of the month anyway.
Right.
Right, the 8th grade parent meeting where the course selection guide, and following that, we start the process beginning in February. So yeah, I will get that done, because I want to get it done too.
So again, we'll just say that we're supporting this but with a few changes that you'll be putting in place so that we can look at them by the voting meeting.
And will that include the 2% for academic to honors and honors AP with a teacher recommendation?
Again, depends upon what each of the departments has to bring back to us. Okay, they're not going to do it in math because that is already low. They've already lowered their number.
They have data.
Chemistry may come back, and the sciences may come back and say,
okay,
nah.
But we will be hearing about this again.
Yes.
All right.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any? Yeah. Again, I have to keep going because I'm passionate about. That's why I'm here to do this part, and I don't want to insult people, and I know I come on a little strong sometimes. But we're not advocating to cut anything. If anything, I'd like to add more courses to the district, but unfortunately, it's difficult times. So it's killing me to have to take foreign language out of the middle school. So.
And maybe it could come back. I mean,
there's nothing about there's no. I mean, there's a lot of things we got to be looking at here.
You're losing one, but you're still gaining what we're replacing it with.
Right.
And that definitely needs attention.
Right. So. Okay.
It's that time.
Yeah, I'm lucky I had my coffee.
I won't even take that. I have this down.
Oh, come on. We were looking forward to this.
No, you don't got 25 minutes. You got 22 minutes according to Verizon.
Oh, that's right. That's Daniel Boone time.
Okay. Okay, I'm just basically going to walk the three board members that are here through the binder that I gave you and direct you to certain conclusions and certain compliments to the high school and to the elementary program and so on. This is a summary of all the different data points that we got from last year. Okay, so especially for Mr. Potts and Mr. Kurtz, as all of what you have in that binder, and unfortunately, what drives everything we do anymore is something called No Child Left Behind. Authorized in 2001, it is already sitting out there, outdated, and no one in Washington is dealing with it, and a lot of that is a political issue right now. So when it's not reauthorized, we maintain mandates of that until it is. From the testing perspective, they seem to continue to add it on the screen right there for you. And this PowerPoint's in the front left of your binders if you wanted to follow along. Those are the PSSA mandated tests. In addition, if you look at 11th grade, they have now also added the Keystone Exams, which they predict will come back again. And so if you look at this year's PSSA schedule, We start in early March and we don't end to the end of April. And so you can look at the chunk of time that these educators lose in instruction because we are really seriously testing. The only two tests that drive the first book you got, the report card, is the reading and the math. The other ones do not count toward, they rank us, but they do not count toward our AYP status, if you will. In addition to the AYP status, we have to do some other things, the first of which is going to play into the warning status the high school is in. 95% of all the students in a grade and in every subgroup of 40 or more students need to take the test. All right, those are requirements, and every school has to take the test. Every public school has to take the test. In addition to that, I had to do all the compilation of data you got in your first binder. We look at graduation rates, we look at attendance, we are held accountable for those things in addition to test scores. And the final thing we're held accountable for is that all of your teachers in your classrooms are qualified to be there. Believe it or not, there are a lot of school districts, I'm not talking Berks County, but across Pennsylvania, where that isn't 100%. And so we have made it our mission that we won't hire someone who's not highly qualified in the Green School District for a particular position. If you look at your binder, just the very first page after the index, when you see me refer to the class of and you're thinking, who are they? I have a cheat sheet in there for you, so that if I'm talking about the class of 2017, let's say, they are currently your 6th graders. So you just sort of lose sight when you start to see classes of, so I've done that chart over the years for you. So that's right behind your index in your booklet.
The class of, it says here 2011, that is beginning in 2011, correct? It's not graduating in 2011?
The class of 2011 are the seniors in 2000, here.
Yeah, those are the ones that started September 2011.
Yeah.
Okay, because
that's the visual aid.
Because I'm looking here, this right here is this year's seniors, right?
No, that was last year,
Last
because
year,
this is
all
the
right.
10-11 book.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So we're always a year behind.
Yeah, this is always lagging data.
Because I don't get a lot of this
Yeah.
data until October of this year, so that's why you see this report
Okay,
when
thank
you
you.
do. Okay?
Yeah.
So the assessment booklet that you have in front of you has 5 different sets of scores. It has Foresight progress data that we've started to use to identify students that are academically both at risk and enriched, as well as our proficient students. All the PSSA scores and some extrapolated data, the SAT scores and our ACT scores, as well as the AP scores, and finally looking at all of that data in September and October, what our staff has come up with as action plans and interventions in order to help our students become closer to the bar that's expected of us through No Child Left Behind. The first section of your binder is going to be the Foresight scores. If you aren't familiar, as a new board member, we give those 3 times a year in grades 3 through 8, and twice a year in grade 11, 9, 10, and 11. I'm sorry, in 3 through 10. And then in 11, we only give it twice because of the mammoth amount of tests the 11th graders are facing in the spring of the year. What I have for you on the following pages, the set of white data, and I just put one up there as an example for you, is in September, in January, and in June, I do the sheet you see in front of you. As a teacher, as a building principal, as my position, as Dr. Otto's position, we focus on the number of students, the percentage of students as a predictor that are going to be proficient, because this is supposedly a significant projection for No Child Left Behind. It's also broken out by special education, because that's a definite subgroup that we have to stay aware of. And we're not looking at worrying about them being advanced. The goal of a Foresight test is a student is proficient. What this particular tool does is an online web tool, allows us to hit, let's say, the 9 for below basic, and it will show us who they are. And so we're able to then tailor programs to the needs of the students, including now we'll be starting in the next week or so at the elementary and the middle school level, after-school programs, which are solely funded by the accountability grant and the wellness grant, which provides us with the busing. And we're able to target students and know their areas of weakness and follow them with each test. Now, the bottom line then is, now we are a year later, one of the questions as an elementary teacher I ask is the student that didn't become proficient on the PSSA test in April, were they the same students that weren't proficient in September on this particular test? If they were, what didn't work? What did I do right? They aren't the same. How did we miss them? Did they just have a bad day? Did they just say to the test? But if they are the same students and we neglected to look at some of them, that's a flag that we have to do things differently. So there's lots of different tools that we come through with using this data, especially at the elementary level. The other thing you can see there by special education, it tells us the number of special education students that are in each proficient level. We looked last year at some of our weak areas, and so one of the major changes we made for this current year, and we'll be anxious to follow the trend in success, not necessarily this year, but especially over the next couple of years, in reading is a brand new Common Core standards-based reading program that we've put into 3, 4, 5, and 6, which we feel will make a big significant impact. If you look at the PSSA section right behind, which is tab number 2, a couple of points about PSSA before we get started as I walk you through knowing what's in that data. The very first insert, which is right after the title page, if you will, shows you what we are facing between now and 2014. Last year, what was called passing, for a simple way, was a 67% of the students in a particular subgroup grade level district scoring proficient in math and 72% in reading. It now jumps significantly. We're now moving up to 78% for this spring in math and 81% in reading. I gave you some newspaper articles from the Reading Eagle Times that talks about a lot of the downfalls of just what you see there. In it's a cookie cutter, one size fits all. That includes your special needs population, frustrations that we face as a school district, and certainly 2 years out, I'm not going to be here telling you we made 100% proficiency. They've tried to band-aid it in all types of ways, and certainly that hasn't worked. I know Mr. Shaheen had asked me what was the direction of the Department of Education of Pennsylvania for the waiver options that President Obama put out. Our governor chose not to sign up for the waiver. There was just a recent article that thus far, I think it's 15 states have been approved, and they're expecting about 39 to apply total. What our Department of Ed was concerned about was if we asked for that waiver for 2012, there was no mention that in 2013 we wouldn't have to go from 67% to 89%. And so they weren't willing to take that risk because of the reauthorization. So in Pennsylvania, where you see 2012 on your sheet, those are the percentages that we have to target, or as they say, move closer to in this year's testing. So one of the things I do once I get these scores in August is I go back to the Foresight scores. So this is your first report. And I compare, so what did the Foresight tell me was predicted to be my percentage of proficiency in any grade or at any building or district-wide versus what we actually did to see how close it was as a predictor. A more educated question then is, are they the same kids? And so we also take a look at that. Are the kids, the 85% of the kids in third grade at Amity in math, the kids that are part of that 89% population, or did something fluky happen that some of those students also weren't scoring proficient? So that's what you find as, we use that just to sort of see how well we do with the Foresight scores, to see how close they are.
Not to steal your time here, but just looking at this couple of snapshots in time, it doesn't look like the Foresight testing in math accurately predicts advanced. The advanced. I mean, you had 0 and 67. You had 0, and then it was 53. It doesn't look like it.
In any documentation on the Foresight, they'll tell you that you almost ignore the advanced.
Okay.
All they're looking at is the proficiency of students versus non-proficient. That's what they're.
That didn't track real well either.
No, not at all. And one of the recommendations that we made to Dr. Otto was, for numerous reasons, we are looking at not doing it at the high school because of the construction of the actual test. It's not worth the investment of the money it costs to do it at the high school level. Third, fourth, and fifth grade, significantly, we do find it very valuable, and I know at the middle school they do also.
Yeah, but you're tracking 30, 40, 50 points different between.
In some.
It's not a valid predictor.
Right.
No, it doesn't look like it's a valid predictor.
Right. It's a formative test that serves us at the elementary as to who needs interventions as the year goes on.
Very powerful.
And we had no test like that in the past, and so for that reason, but as far as being an accurate predictor, I have not found it to be 100% accurate. I just do this to see if it's the same students, to see what type of intervention programs are working for us. If you look at the article or the editorial that was in the Reading Eagle Times I gave you a copy of today, some of the flaws that some of your superintendents brought out, and certainly you hear this year after year, is that PSSA test is a one-size-fits-all, and we certainly know that our population is not that. It doesn't monitor student achievement or growth over the course of a year. It's a one-day shot. And finally, it compares different populations of students in certainly diverse school districts and then throws you in a pot.
Well,
and so
the one thing they're missing, and Mr. Kirch could probably, and these mean absolutely nothing to the students. They don't care. They take little, if any, seriousness when they take this test.
It's pretty sad,
Right.
actually.
Yeah.
So let me walk back for a second just before I show you what I have there in that book for you for PSSA and go back to one of the first screens. What you saw in your district report card was that Birdsboro came out of warning this year. They had been in warning 2 years ago. The high school went into warning, and one of the two reasons was because of the participation rate. That was due to a subgroup, and we call that subgroup our economically disadvantaged subgroup, of which the high school had 41 students. They needed 40 to have that group, and 3 of those students were in an alternative placement, and those students didn't show up for the test. And so we don't administer it to students in full-day placements, and unfortunately you can't challenge that with the Department of Education, but it was not our students in Daniel Boone that created the 95% weak area. Unfortunately, we saw who they were. Bill and I have looked at those students. It was students in one of our local alternate ed placements that has never been an issue before. Something that we're going to take a look at for this year as far as students that are out. The other warning that the high school went into, again, the same population of 41 students, did not show significant reading growth, and so that is a subgroup that we did look at. different kids for this year, but Mr. McElmoyle will have that population, and so the English teachers need to be looking at that group of students to be able to support them before the test starts. So it made us feel good about implementing Read 180 because our special ed, which across the county is certainly a significant impact on a lot of high schools. Our high school is still doing a good job, and the high school as a whole made it. It is that economically disadvantaged group, unfortunately.
Well,
Those students-
special ed.
but they still, we didn't get hit for them this year.
No, but you're right. I think there's
Yeah,
special ed and
are going to be an
that's
issue.
why.
If a student is given a test and chooses not to participate, puts his head down, is that student, in the eyes of the state, considered as having participated in
No.
the test?
He has to do a certain number of the pages in order to be considered participating. Yeah. Some of the flaws of PSSA, repeating some things, every year the cut score changes as to what I'll call it passing is. They compare different populations, so they'll compare your score for last year's third grade and this year's third grade, and then give you a ranking
That's
instead of the
invalid.
same kids.
That's just statistically invalid.
It's not normed like your quality tests are from ETS. And in many cases, it's the open-ended questions are scored by non-content specialists. And so those also play into the population. The white set of scores that you have, move on here, is the way the Department of Ed gives us our scores. Same grade, different kids. So the white sheets that you have in that section show you grade 3 math, let's say, but different kids. And you're comparing
and as
them.
long as I've been on the board, I'm telling you statistically that it's an invalid
Right.
comparison, and
So
you
if
didn't waste
go
your
to
time
then-
looking at it.
If you go to the buff colored sheets behind that, this is my set of data that's what I believe is more founded, and this is my way of looking at the same group of kids over 2 years. And so you'll see me compare grade 3 to grade 4. In this case, I just have an example on the overhead for you that shows you grade 6 and grade 7. It's the same kids over 2 years, so that we can see. We look at special ed. I have it broken out so you can see the difference in the number of special ed. We're talking the same students. If you look at this, we're talking 6th to 7th grade. In 6th grade, 17 special ed students were below basic. When they got to 7th grade, only 7 of them were below basic. And so you can see that the number of advanced, proficient, and basic kids moved up. And so those are all different data points, as Mr. Shaheen says, that we take a look at. There are issues in 4th and 5th grade reading that we knew about, and the solution of the new Common Core Standards reading series for teachers, which allows for a lot of differentiated instruction, we're hoping will certainly help to remedy that situation. The next tab has the SAT scores. I also gave you an article from the Reading Eagle Times that speaks to the increasing number of students that are participating. For new board members here at the table, if you look at the bottom right of that summary chart, writing only became a required subject in 2006, and so that's why you don't see them in the, and so I compare the national averages to the state averages to Daniel Boone, and also show you the number of graduates and then our percentage that actually took the test. In addition to that, this year Mr. McElmoyle got a report that he shared with me that shows you our SAT scores, or our ACT scores, and it compares the national score, the state score, and Daniel Boone scores, and then also gives us comparison data on the average score of a Boone student that took, for example, 4 years of English plus electives, and 4 years of English. And then in the math section, that took Algebra 1, 2, Geometry, Trig, and Calculus. So it allows us to profile our students and look at our programs, and I think as you look down the right-hand side, you can see that our kids do well when you compare them to national and state averages, which is certainly a credit to the program that has evolved at the high school. In AP, I give you several different ways of looking at the scores. Mr. Shaheen had asked me to bring the first chart to you earlier where we were trying to determine the number of students that take the course and then take the test. Here's your summary for last year. Remember, students are trying to at least score a minimum of 3. And then I also break it down historically for you on the following set of sheets, the buff sheets where I give you a history, which would show you the number of participants and then the number of students each year that scored 1 through 5 for your own benefit.
I got just a real quick question again.
No, because I have to talk.
I know, but I'll give you a couple minutes because I got to ask.
Okay.
9-10 AP Calculus, I know we keep talking about that being an outlier because 10 kids took that. Do we know what the average was state-wise, national-wise, or anything else? Was
33.3% of that group got 1s
okay
on the test.
Okay.
And it was about 22% were 5s. I mean, that's worldwide.
Okay, but so it wasn't an easier test. I mean, so we were definitely outliers on that one there.
And last year was about the same. It was 33.1% received 1s last year.
Okay. I just wanted to sometimes the test could be scaled where it was easier to take, and I just wanted to, because it definitely shows something. So.
And the very last page in tab number 4, which I inserted for you today, shows you shows you over 5 years. It compares the total number of AP students at Boone, the number that took the test, the total number of Boone kids that made 3 or higher, and then it compares it to the same data for number of students in Pennsylvania, or the percentage and numbers of students in Pennsylvania and the United States. So you can just see some comparison scores there. So it's telling us that 77% of the students that took AP tests at Boone last year scored 3 or higher. The average in Pennsylvania was 67%, and the average across the United States was 60%. And the last tab is what the staff did in August and September and in the in-service time in October, and that was to take all of these pieces of data along with data from DIBEL scoring and other formative assessments and come up with a plan that they have started to implement that will continue until the PSSA tests and in many cases through the end of the school year, and basically asking some simple questions. What do we need to do? When does it have to happen by? Who's going to do it? And how are we going to know if it was successful? We looked at a lot of different tools. Thank goodness accountability grant came through again, so it gave us some money to be able to both buy resources and pay staff to do after-school programming. And the wellness grant came through that got the buses that we needed for especially the elementary programs for kids to be able to stay after school. And so we are very hopeful that a lot of this data and the different tools that the Department of Ed has given us to identify students certainly will be helpful. But outweighing that is certainly the reality that we know there's limitations in some of our academically at-risk students. And so to get them to 81, 90, or 100% is, we work toward it and we do what we can do for the students.
Well, again, they're great goals to work toward if you're given the funds to do so. But you can't go and say we need 100% in 3 years and then cut the budgets. I mean, this year we were told unofficially that at a minimum we're going to be flat funded. At a minimum.
Yeah.
It may go the other way. So.
Some of the things we did is making sure parents know exactly the strengths and the areas that they need to support us academically with some of their students. As much reading and math time, especially at the elementary, that we can provide. We got very creative with elementary schedules. We bought the new reading series. We try to do a lot of different progress monitoring, not just the Foresight. Special ed teachers have assumed a very active role in a lot of instruction, and the Read 180 at the high school that we put in to support the Academy of Reading that was in the middle school. And one of the major areas that Dr. Otto had brought home to the principals was that they truly have to assume the role of the instructional leaders and have data team meetings and grade level meetings and communicating on a regular basis. And so we even have quarterly meetings where all that data is brought to the table here for us to look at as a district. And that's it.
Any questions?
There's always the full-time placements that you were talking about. They were
Mr. Shack, could you flip the lights on so we can see you? You look like you're sitting in the dark.
You have Daniel Boone students going somewhere else for the instruction, but our tax money is going to whatever is doing that. Is that correct?
We're paying tuition for the students.
Right. Shouldn't we have some control over whether or not they're taking the test or not? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Since it's our tax money?
Put them in a van and drive them here and make them.
We choose to tell them they had to report to us those 3 days.
Yes.
But it had never been an issue. We assumed they were vigilantly watching the students. This is the first year that's ever been a problem.
And I would recommend it doesn't happen again. I mean, we know now.
We know to make sure of that.
You mentioned, is it Foresight? Am I using the right word? Mm-hmm. And is that a high school test given in what grade?
No, it actually runs through Patan and PDE, like you buy into it.
Yeah.
And
but it costs
it's available, yeah, it costs you. It actually is offered from 3rd through 11th grade.
Okay, and we give it in 11th?
We give it in 9, 10, and 11 this year.
Okay.
Cost versus value of the data has proven, this is the first year we did the high school, and it is not proven for the amount of money.
And my question is, you could save money by not giving the test, but in addition to that, how many days does that consume?
It's two 1-hour tests.
Foresight's much shorter.
Much shorter.
It's designed to be the whole concept of the Foresight is it's designed to help you, rather than waiting till the day of the test to figure out where the students are. It gives you a chance midstream, partway through the year, to determine where there may be deficiencies and to begin to prepare the student to perform better once the test comes.
Mrs. Trainer, can you give us the value? Can you give us the cost of not? Because I don't think
it would be $6,000 less not doing the high school next year.
I mean, it's not. We just paid for Mr. McAdams to play, so not being facetious. But we don't. If we're not getting any benefit from it, then let's not waste the time. Let's give them the academic time back.
The other piece is we own the test. Like once the boxes show up, we actually scan them in and it's fed through the web. So the high school teachers can use it as a practice tool, and they have the answering, scoring. So they can work with the students, but the value of taking the time and scanning and looking at all the results is not giving us what we wanted to for the high school.
And this presentation was given here. Now, the 3 board members that are here have greater knowledge of this. Is this the first year you're not showing it to the whole board?
No, the board will get an abbreviated version of this. This is, the board gets, I mean, Emery, you're going to present a little bit, you're going to, a very short version, I would assume. I mean, before this used to be,
shorter than this.
Used to be draconian. We used to get an hour of this.
I know.
Okay? I mean, Grant.
Say enthusiastic.
Yeah. I mean,
Connor's getting hours.
Yeah.
The rest of you can go home.
No, so I mean, what we're trying to do, I mean, the board will get this. She'll give them
the board gets a copy of this.
They'll get a high-level overview and not the. It'll be probably a third of the time what we just got. We used to get it in much more detail as an entire board. We decided to move it into the committee, and then Anne-Marie give a high level for the entire board.
I guess it can be done in 20 minutes. I would like to see the whole board see not just the abbreviated, is what I'm saying. I think it's that important that not just 3 of you. I mean, 3 of you now have good knowledge of this. I think the other ones should have the same thing. And I know on PSSA you see on TV where elementary schools or middle schools may have like pep rallies for PSSA. is there somehow to sit, and you give this to 11th graders at the high school, right? To sort of sit them down and have a little
Do you really think a 17-year-old is going to care?
No, I'm just saying, it may not affect them, but it may affect their younger brother or sister, what they have to them. And if you explain it to them that way, they may not just go down and put A.
I think that's a good
you
idea.
understand what I'm saying?
I think telling
we do present to them incentives that are rewards if they attain proficiency. For example, we have a student union for seniors that are proficient or better. So if they have any study halls, they go to the student union. The student union is a place where honestly they want to be in there. Another incentive is we have a $20 parking fee. If they get proficient or better, that fee is waived. If they are not proficient, it will be on their transcript. So we're trying to always come up with things to motivate them. Just talking to them, or obviously a pep rally isn't going to work for a 17-year-old.
No, I understand.
Well, I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we offer rewards at the high school. I think if we told them, this is why this is important, it's important for the district, it's important, this is why we do it, the state tells us to do it. I think if we talk to them like adults, I know maybe they won't want to listen, but I think it's worth it. If we tell them, this is very important for the district, please, I know it's boring, but please do it anyway. We need you to do it.
I think I'm going to disagree with you. I've talked to several. I mean, when I saw the scores come out, I was at a get-together this weekend of 6 juniors. They said, we don't care.